I'm recording. I'm here with Ringleader. How you doing today?
Hey man, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So I think that you may have first encountered me with my article on Civil War, and also an article I did on the future of the Democrat Party. Um,
hmm
Looking at your Substack, I guess if I were to put you in some categories, say you're on the right. I think you're a Christian. Um, you think that maybe there's some you might be optimistic about a Trump Vance administration, and cynical about like the long term prospects of an American empire, and maybe have a more um, isolationist or nationalist view of the optimal American foreign policy. Are those on target? Is there some things I'm missing there?
I'd say that's a pretty good read, bro.
So I think one of the things that I um, probably starting very broadly, um, one of the things that I have trouble with when it comes to isolationism historically is it's difficult for me to find examples of empires that begin the process of expansion and then suddenly realize like, oh no, we're like expansion has costs associated with it. We should go back to a limited form of nationalism. There's many different, and like Rome, I guess is an example people like to point out. Um, Rome initially was a city state, and then had Latium, which was only a small part of the Italian peninsula. Most of the Italian peninsula were not people who were not Italic speakers. They were either Greek speakers, Etruscan speakers. They didn't have control over the Italian peninsula. They eventually gained control and they expanded all over the Mediterranean. It's difficult for me to, I guess, at the level of a city state or maybe within Italy, it's imaginable that the Romans could have said, you know what, if we just keep expanding and giving citizenship to everybody, eventually we're going to have this unmanageable empire, and eventually it's going to collapse and it's going to be bloody and chaotic. And so let's avoid that because we want to maintain our Roman identity. We want to maintain, the purity of the blood of the Senate. We don't want any dirty Celts in our Senate. So we're going to be ethno-nationalists about this and not imperialists. We're going to reverse this process.
hmm
Do you know of any historical examples where something like that has successfully happened, or kind of what would be the optimal case scenario for America in your view?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I can really think of a good historical example off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't know. As far as like your framing of it kind of being an empire and then having that conscious decision to protract as opposed to just continually getting high on the supply of that power and then eventually it collapsing or degenerating to whatever degree and then things having to rebuild from there, just the general course of empire framework. So not sure about that. As far as America is concerned, um, interestingly, I think that we're kind of in an epoch where we can kind of have that thought process to some extent because we're able to look back and see all of these empires that have done exactly that, where they just continually grew larger and larger and larger until they were so unmanageable that they did eventually just fall. Um, and I think a lot of American political theory and a trend in Western political theories, particularly like in the 20th century, has been that of analyzing that and saying, well, look, we've got to address this because it's gonna come up one way or the other. As far as what I see, how I see that going forward in America, yeah, I think with Trump and Vance getting elected, I really see, as far as I'm concerned, the potential for exactly the type of foreign policy that I'm interested in, which is peace. And it is a local emphasis on the local, emphasis on the one's own country and one's own interest first, America first. And I would be very happy to see the Russo-Ukrainian war ended as soon as possible. I would be very happy to see a some type of ceasefire, whatever that may be, in Israel, Palestine, that situation. And as far as things go, I think both of those two things would be such a stabilizing force for global geopolitics, and that's that's would be ideal.
With regard to Israel, I guess do you think it's possible that a ceasefire is achieved in, let's say, the first year of a Trump term, that um, and that ceasefire is sustainable in the long term, or do you feel that a ceasefire is just, well, not actually moving toward a peace process, but just like a temporary pause in the fighting, which is then going to resume in the next 10 years or something? Um,
Mhm.
and if so, then do you think that America's involvement with Israel is generally, that Trump and Vance are setting us on a course for ultimate disengagement, or do you think they're kind of digging that hole further and increasing the ties between America and Israel?
Hard to say. Ideally, I would like to see it disengaged.